It doesn't show that we're live on here. Oh, nope, it just came up. Don't listen to me. There we go. Perfect.
All right. Let's hope the internet is stable enough to go. All right. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the 𝐓𝐼𝐢 Gamescast. Today we have a very special guest with us, Andi Gibson, who plays old and young Impa. Andi, for those who may not know who you are, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to let them know what you've done outside of Zelda, because they may be more familiar with some of your other work if they haven't played Hyrule Warriors just yet.
Oh, great. Okay, I'm Andi Gibson, and I started voiceover in commercial, doing craft and different things. I've done several spots for Airbnb, often in a different accent. But other games, I was the tree in the remake of The Secret of Mana.
Oh.
And let's see, I played the parodies of Kim Kardashian, Madonna, and Paris Hilton in the sequel to the Shaq Fu game, Shaq Fu: A Legend Reborn, which a lot of you that played it may not know because they accidentally left me off the credits. But I hope that they finally fixed that with a patch or something.
Oh, no.
I know, it was kind of a bummer, but that was a fun game, and, it took a long time to come out. All that. Let's see. I played Joy Hayden in Sinking City, and I played a handful, maybe 5 or so different characters in the Bear With Me series, 1, 2, and 3. I played a British character named Alison Soto in the Dead Reckoning games, 1 and 2, I think. I hope I'm getting that title right. Just kind of do the work and then go on to the next thing. So I have to write them down or I forget, and I'll go back and look at my little resume thing and be like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Right.
So I remembered in my first interview, I was like, oh, I left off the Mana Tree, which I know not everybody really loved that game, that remake all that much, but I really liked being able to do a different kind of character. She was very magical and ethereal, and they kind of played with my voice, mechanized it a little bit. So that was really fun. But yeah,
funny, that's a bond you and Sean must share now, that you both play giant talking trees in different games.
Right? I mean, I think as an actor, that's one of those things, because when you start out, right, in kids' plays, it's always like, you're a tree, and you're a bunny, you're a cloud. So it's one of those things, like, you come full circle and you're like, I got to be a tree.
Really quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to say for everyone who's watching live, I apologize for the quality, but we're also recording a better version. So when you watch the edited interview, everything should look and sound a lot better and not be as choppy for the people that are watching live. But for watching live, you'll have your questions answered at the end. So thank you for that. And not only are you and Sean have both done trees, but he's also in the Secret of Mana game, isn't he?
I think so. I think he did a bunch of different characters in that one also, if I recall.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a chameleon. Character skills go.
Yeah, it actually reminds me of what we were talking about just before we went live with how he does Rivali and the Great Deku Tree, because they're such different characters and the voices in Breath of the Wild. Whenever in Breath of the Wild you did the elderly Impa, but in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity you do the younger Impa, and it's 2 completely different voices. Whenever Daniel and I first heard it, it took Joe to mention it the last time he was on, that it was the same voice actor. And Daniel and I, we just both had our minds blown at that point, because we were like, no way.
You can see it on screen as I'm like, what? That's the same actor? Like, yeah. Very much a testament to your skill.
Thank you. I take that as a compliment. I really appreciate that. And just initially in the first one, because old Impa doesn't sound like this,
Right.
There was a lot of, oh my gosh, that's you, like how awesome. And I've really dug how many people are still being surprised by that news, that I do both renditions of Impa in the Breath of the Wild game. So that's exciting.
So
something else we mentioned as well is we felt a little bad because we didn't have you on before Age of Calamity with older Impa, or talking about that role, even though it's such an important thing. Like, you were the front and center of a lot of marketing, with Impa's dialogue being in almost all the trailers for that game, for Breath of the Wild and everything. And I feel so bad that we never got around to it now.
Oh, that's okay.
I believe Impa's voice was the very first that we heard.
To me too. Oh,
sorry,
we're talking over each other. I do that. I babble.
No,
all the time.
Yeah.
You're right at home here.
But yeah, with the Breath of the Wild, one of the first trailers in English that they put out, I believe it was before you hear Zelda or anyone else's voice, you hear Impa's voice telling the story. Like, this is the story of the Calamity, or whatever the line is. I don't really remember. But I remember hearing it in the trailer, and it reminded me of the first Hyrule Warriors, because it had voice acting in it a little bit as well. And there was a lot of debate on whether Breath of the Wild was going to have full voice acting, or if it was going to take the path of Hyrule Warriors, to where it was just a narration. So there's a lot of debate in the community among the lines that you had for that first trailer, until you started hearing the other voice actors. Right,
to know, like, oh, is this all we're going to get?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very exciting to hear that I got to be the first voice in the trailer when that came out, because I didn't know, we don't know what cuts they're going to use and whatnot from the game. And I've told this story before, but it's so funny. A friend of mine, we've been friends forever, and they're still big fans of the Zelda franchise, and realized before I did that they were making a new Zelda game, and was like, so are you going to be in it? And I was like, I have no idea. I had said something about, I booked a video game, and he's like, I bet it's that. And I'm like, I had literally said nothing else. And the trailer came out, and they recognized my voice, even though I'm sounding like a little old lady, because we've been friends. They're like, she's like my younger sister, basically. We grew up together, so she can still hear me in that. And she posted it, my friend, and I was like, no, we can't say anything yet. Take it down. I don't want to get in trouble, because that was still, Impa was kind of a secret, a secret reveal in that game, as she also was in Age of Calamity, because a playable character until they did that gameplay. And she wasn't in the poster, any of the, because she's not a hero. So I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll just wait and see how they do this.
But she is a hero in my heart.
Yeah.
She's the ultimate Lionel Slayer. So.
It's really, it must have been kind of, I don't want to say odd for you, but what was it like for you whenever in Breath of the Wild they had you play as Impa doing the one voice, and then when they had you come back, and whenever we talked to people before, they said whenever they didn't really have to re-audition for Hyrule Warriors, but they were kind of told that it might be something else before it was revealed to be Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So they didn't actually know for sure that it was going to be like the next Breath of the Wild Zelda game or whatever. Right. But they ended up being able to go back and do the same voices again. But for you, whenever they had you come back, you're doing a completely different voice, but it's for the same character. Have you ever had to do something like that before, or was this like a first time for you doing the same character, but like a completely different take on it?
Oh yeah, definitely the first time ever. And I didn't know that I was going to be doing the younger version when I got into my first session. So I had called back my work as older Impa so that I could make sure I wasn't digressing from her original sound and all of that. And then I got into the studio and I see young Impa on the screen, and I was so excited. I think she might be more than just a narrator this time. So that was great. I got to do a ton of cutscenes and, lots of dubbing and the fighting efforts and all that stuff, which was so completely different than the big chunks of narration, and that's it in the previous game. So it's not, doing the same character 100 years apart is definitely something I've never done before.
Yeah, it's...
I guess, did that really challenge the way that you view the character of Impa? Because I know for me personally, on the gamer side of things, going back to seeing how Impa was in Breath of the Wild and kind of how you almost kind of take her for granted in that story, no offense or anything, but then how central she is to Age of Calamity and how she's really, for lack of better words, she's really quite badass in that game. And it just really good. Then going back to Breath of the Wild, because I can't stop playing that game either. Just seeing seeing those two sides of her made me think of her differently in the other game as well. Did you have any similar, I guess, impact, or did it shift your perspective in any way that way, or?
Well, I mean, a little bit, yeah, because I remember when we were in the studio finding the voice for old Impa, even though she's like 112 or 20, something like that, we still landed on a voice that was more like 70s, because she still had a younger energy about her. So now meeting her in this capacity and seeing what a great fighter she is, and, her tenacity, and that makes a little more sense. Like, oh, I see, she wasn't really that old still, even though we don't really see her moving around. She's just chilling on her pillow. She's like, I'm done. I'm tired.
Yeah, that's relatable.
I
feel that way often.
Playing through the game, I couldn't believe how integral young Impa was to this story, because not just her, but the other young Sheikah. I don't want to mispronounce her name, but Purah? Yeah, Purah. Those two seem to have like the most comedic parts out of all of Hyrule Warriors, and watching just the cutscenes alone is just enough to where, like, Breath of the Wild had more of a serious tone through all of the cutscenes. Like, it's always Zelda. I don't want to say it's always her arguing with Link, and then Link obviously doesn't say anything back. But in this, it's Hyrule Warriors. Yeah, there's a lot more comedy, and then the whole the reoccurring Impa arguing with the little baby robot. Everyone compares it to Baby Yoda, but it's always hilarious to see them like nitpicking at each other. And then, I can't say the spoiler at the end because some people haven't played through the whole game, but towards the end there's a lot of funny parts as well after the serious parts. So it's really nice just to see that it isn't just, it's not really fan service from having this character from the first game, but it's like bringing them in to be an even bigger part than you would expect. So I just really,
and that's really exciting.
Yeah,
to be like, I get to feel like a bigger part of the ensemble this time around, and actually being a playable character that has so many cool moves, and she really is a badass. I mean, I'm loving all the feedback from the fans on how much they're enjoying playing with her, fighting as her versus the other characters. It's just really fun, and I've never had a character in a game get this much, feedback and be quite such a badass like this. So
that's fair. I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but she's my favorite character to play as, actually. And it's hilarious because you see her and Link, my own file, are like level 80 or something like that, and all my other characters, I keep having to go and like go to the training camp and just like force level them up because I just haven't been using them as much. And it's really quite a hard bias, but yeah, she's a very dynamic, very cool character to play as. Absolutely my favorite.
Yeah. We just got a donation in from RPG who says, really awesome to have Andi on the cast to talk about her experience. Amazing job. So thank you, RPG.
Oh, thank you, RPG.
Yeah, so with what he's saying, your overall experience, what would you say the biggest difference was recording with Breath of the Wild and then with Age of Calamity? Because not just the different voices you have to do, but was the experience from, I don't know if you had to go into the studio or if you had to record from your house or what the experience was like, but how was it different this time around?
Well, I did go into the studio, and definitely with the pandemic, there was a big difference in that no one else.
Oh.
It was just me, and I mean, we record individually anyway as actors. It's very rare that, maybe if you're on an episodic for animation, some of those will still do ensemble cast, but usually ourselves anyway. But it was just me and the studio tech at 48 Windows, and they did a great job with all of their, sanitizing and everything. Nobody touched any of my stuff. I was in my own little bubble and all that. But normally you would have the director there with you, and then we'd have some Nintendo people possibly in the room or, in my cans, but everybody was in the cans and I was just in the room. So that was different. And we had a different director for this game, so he had a bit of a different style. But almost virtually everything I had to do was dubbing and matching the lip flaps, where with older Impa, I don't know what that was. There's so much narration stuff with other visuals happening that I didn't have to do a ton of that lip flap, dubbing, matching stuff. So with the timing and getting it to look right, it's such an interesting, very different voiceover skill that I was happy to work on. But it's a bear to be like, well, we got to try and match the lips up, but they're speaking completely different language. Here we go. And of course, all the fighting efforts, that was something I'd never really done, just pre-recording tons of different fighting efforts for all the different moves that she does. Even though my characters fought in Shaq Fu, we didn't have a ton of that going. And it was, that's a bit of a lower budget game anyway, but, it was like, whoa, I guess I'm done with that.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned Shaq Fu, because I remember whenever they first announced the trailer for it, it was, how many years ago was it? I just remember he was on the trailer and it was almost like he looked at it not as a joke, but he knew and understood that there was the older game, right? That a lot of people
right.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, it was a flop.
Yeah,
I think.
But it had a cult
yeah.
following. That's what it was. That's what I was trying to think of.
Right.
Where it was one of a movie that people watched that was so bad that they just had to get all their friends to watch it. And then whenever they tried to remake it with the newer version, in the trailer they were kind of playing on the fact that everyone kind of knew that game as almost a flop. I don't want to say a joke, it feels bad, but yeah. But I love that they played into the comedy of it in the trailer.
Exactly. And that's why I think it was so important to him to make a new one. He wanted to make a new one that he had more control in, and he actually recorded in the studio and everything. So
yeah.
I imagine they had to get on a ladder to adjust his microphone.
Yeah. With Age of Calamity and also Breath of the Wild as well, since we didn't have you on to talk about Breath of the Wild, With both of the games, what would your favorite experience be with those? Whether it's like a certain line that you loved, or like because of being in Breath of the Wild, maybe another job got offered to you that you may have not gotten before, or like what did you find in the whole process that you enjoyed the most with Breath of the Wild and then Age of Calamity?
Well, I do really enjoy getting into character voices, and so, you know, I'm not doing big monsters and stuff like that, but I get to do old ladies. I've done a small handful of old ladies now, and so it's fun when you get to find a real, you know, gritty character. I don't know if gritty is the right word, but like sink your teeth into a character voice like that. And then have a lot of dialogue to play around with. So that was fun, just having good bulky narration to play with in this character voice. And then after the fact, when it was released, just how beautiful it was and how popular it became, that when someone, you know, I was finding gamers all over the place that just were like, they were treating me like a celebrity because they discovered that I played that character in the game. And that was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. You know, Zelda fans are so awesome and just so into all the games that I remember I was in Atlanta at a voiceover conference, and we were in a Lyft riding back to the hotel after dinner. And my friend shouted out something like, oh, you know, what do you guys do? What are you here for? Blah, blah, blah. So it came out we were voice actors. And she's like, oh, yeah, she's in Legend Breath of the Wild. He almost crashed the car. He was like so excited that he's driving. And he was like, what? Like turned around. I'm like, hey, dude, you're driving. You know, calm down.
Yeah. Sadly, I feel like that could have been me as well.
About it. Like, I love that game. I'm playing the game right now. Oh my god, you know. So that's been fun.
Scary, but fun.
But and then this has been such a completely different experience. I mean, people are still really excited about it, and I love that. And you know, chatting with the fans on Twitter and answering questions and doing interviews and stuff like this. I didn't do any of that the first time. Because like you guys said, you thought that the actress was actually an older lady and wouldn't be interested in that, but it's me. Hi. So that's been a lot of fun. I just, I'm finally getting people getting, autographs off of my website, and, you know, I've just mailed off my first one yesterday, or I'm going to tomorrow, and so that's fun stuff. And if any of you guys have requests for like different images that you'd like to see, you know, maybe a screenshot from the game or something like that for as autograph options, let me know, because I'd love to. I'll throw those up there too.
All right, yeah, we'll totally do that.
Yeah, and then I like the fighting efforts. That just was so cool to me, because that wasn't any dubbing. We just did those blind. But because the moves are, you know, only a certain amount of time, I'm also a singer. So anything with timing, I'm like, let's do this. Like, we've got to get it right, you know. And it was like, okay, on this one you have 0.01 seconds, or like something.
No pressure.
Like, okay, well, we've got to, you know, shorten this to something else. And some of them, even that move she does all the time, steal yourself.
Yes.
Nobody realized that that's what she was saying so fast still. So they thought it was steer yourself. And I'm like, oh no, it's actually steal yourself, because I remember that. And when you have to do it so fast, you really have to enunciate. Otherwise, it just sounds like gobbledygook, you know, and they're like, what is she saying?
Actually,
there's actually...
we got another super chat.
That's what I was going to mention as well.
From... Oh, okay. Birdman donated $4.99. He asked, well, two things. One, he actually just said, steal yourself, I am ready. Right before you said that. Also, Birdman asked, if you had the chance to, how would you voice the character of Paya from Breath of the Wild?
I think Paya would be a little bit more like, like a valley girl, teen girl. I think the way that Miss Thing did her was fantastic. I thought as soon as I heard her voice, I was like, how cute, who's that? I love her. So, yeah.
That's adorable.
All your ears bleed now. You're welcome.
Yeah. Also, to answer really quick here at the beginning, someone in the comments says the video is really low quality. I apologize for that. There's a weird issue with the Wi-Fi, but Daniel is doing a second recording. So after the live stream, we will upload a higher quality version for everyone to watch. That'll have better audio and video for everyone. So I apologize for that.
My fault.
No, it is completely my fault. I must be too far away from the Wi-Fi router. But you were answering actually about how you would voice Paya. So whenever you did the original voice for Impa, how did you sort of come to find that voice? And were there other voices that you tried before you fell onto the one that you ended up doing, or was it a suggestion from the producers or the people at the studio, or what was that experience like?
Well, we just kind of started, I realized she was younger, of course, when I saw her. It all just kind of happened in the studio organically, and I worked with the director, Jeremy Hall, on finding her voice right before we started recording. And we didn't take much time with it. I started right in where I speak normally, and then we adjusted it just a little bit. But I do feel like she sounds a lot like me, like my natural voice, which is exciting because I do character voices a lot. It's like, oh, hey, this one, she actually sounds like me. So anyone were to play the game, they're like, I know who that is. So that's kind of fun. But we did, there were bits when I get excited and when I need to project, my voice gets higher. I'm a soprano, so that just happens naturally. And Jeremy would keep having to pull me down a little bit because we didn't want to get into Paya territory because that's a different character. But we are sisters, so I feel like our timbres match pretty well to be, related. But that was the only thing. She's just a little more grounded and a little more serious than Paya. So we wanted to make sure to keep that separate. That's all.
Daniel, do you have a question before I ask mine? I don't want to
actually
take your turn.
I did have a question, but
okay.
through all the rambling, it basically got answered already. So you can go ahead.
All right. I was going to ask, when you first got into voice acting, what was sort of your mindset? And you also mentioned that you were a singer as well. So how long have you been in this career?
Oh, dare I date myself? But I actually started acting officially in music videos back in the 80s. I did the Gypsy video for Fleetwood Mac, and I was in the Heart Attack video for Olivia Newton-John. I know I may be baffling the minds of many young gamers right now who don't know those videos, but
I love Fleetwood Mac, actually.
That one still plays on the radio, and so does what's it called? 10cc was a band, and I had a little teeny cameo in that video. She's a Beauty, 1 in a million girl, and they still play that one on the radio too. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, my childhood will never leave me. But and then officially was in the studio recording vocals for a cartoon when I was 7 for the first time. And so that's, my family is show people. My parents met doing Jesus Christ Superstar together in New York back in the 70s. So my mom found out she was pregnant when she was on tour with Bob Dylan, singing background for him. So just show people. So then my god uncle, or as we say, gunkle, as for gay uncle, but Kenny Ortega was directing music videos back then, before Dirty Dancing, before the Michael Jackson tour and all that. And so when they wanted a little role, they would call my mom and be like, okay, we've got something for you. And they'd throw me on set. When I was very shy, I didn't have lines or anything at that point. So, but growing up with a loudmouth show mom, I ended up having to come out of my shell and kind of hold my own. So I've been doing it for a very long time. I sang in theme parks in Japan for Universal and Hollywood, and did Disney for many years, and sang on a cruise ship, and I sung background and in all-star choirs and Barbra Streisand and all kinds of stuff. All that, I think all that fun stuff's on my website. So, but voiceover, that first time in the recording studio as a singer is when voiceover kind of sparked in my brain, because they wanted me to do the voice for the lead character in the cartoon, and then it never happened. So when I just got to sing the Thundercats theme song, Thundercats Roar theme song, it like came full circle, because I was like, oh my gosh, how many years later, and this is actually happening now. So that was pretty fun. But I think when I started voiceover, one of my shows at Disney was closing, and I was like, okay, I'm finally going to try this, because I've been hearing for years how I should get into voiceover, and I'm finally going to do it now. And I thought I would start with animation, because I have such a character sound naturally, and I do dialects and character voices. But what popped off first was commercials, and I was surprised by that, but I wasn't going to say no. So I just kept on going, and then video games followed quickly after. And I still, to this day, haven't done much animation, but I've done some of the Super Wings shows, which is for the little ones like 3 to 5, and I can't remember a couple other things. Oh, I got to be Jane Jetson, but that was in a commercial, so it was still a commercial thing, but that was a fun voice match for LG. So anyways, I'm babbling again.
No.
Throwback.
I know, God, and I was so excited because I always loved the Jetsons. I grew up watching reruns of the Jetsons. So I would be Judy in that commercial, and then they didn't want me Judy. They decided they wanted me for Jane, and I was like, oh, okay. And when I saw the commercial, Judy only had one line, and Jane had the whole commercial. It's like her birthday in the commercial. So I was like, oh my God, how exciting. And then the nerves came. Because I was like, okay, talk about legacy character, Jeebus. And there were, 10 people from the Korea team there in the room, and I was like, oh man, I hope they like this. I better not screw it up.
I don't know about Daniel, but you blew my mind so many times during that. All of the different things that you mentioned was just like one after another, like, oh my God, I can't believe that. So
yeah, so just keep on plugging. And in school, I was always kind of a triple threat. And now, since I'm not a dancer anymore, I'm still a triple threat in that I do the voiceover and the singing. And I don't remember what the other thing was. Dog walking. I guess that's my third.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
So
well, I guess on camera acting. So it still counts as acting.
There you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jesse, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to ask a random question. I remembered some of the questions that some people asked earlier. So I was just going to go and ask one of them. But I didn't want to interrupt because I can't see you on the video.
Oh, no.
So I don't know when you're about to start talking, because usually I can just watch and tell from everyone's body language when they're about to start saying something, but my screen's but yeah,
that's okay.
So one of the co-hosts for the podcast that was wanting to be on here earlier, before she realized that it might contain some spoilers that she wanted to avoid, is, with all of the experience that you've had, what would be some unique advice that you would give to someone who is just starting or wanting to get into? Because for those that are familiar with the podcast or that may not know, The Geek Apprentice, her username, if you want to go look her up, is I would say, would you say amateur voice actor? She's been in some stuff.
I would say she's in her early. She started getting a few good paid gigs and stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say amateur anymore, but
Yeah, she's been in a few small games.
She only recently got started into it.
Yeah.
But I know she would be super thrilled. I think you two would get along famously, actually, Andy. But because there's quite a lot of similarities. She's also a dancer and a singer as well. So yeah, I'm sure she would. Sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
No, I was going to say she does a lot of on-stage choreographing and dancing and stuff with her performances. But she was really excited to come on, and then she realized that she hadn't played through much of the game and didn't want to have the spoilers. But her question that she wanted me to ask was about advice that you would offer to someone else who might be wanting to broaden their career in voice acting or take their first dive into it.
Yeah, I started doing coaching not too long ago, and was pulling together classes and things like that. And now I still coach, but I do more one-on-one via Skype, and it's kind of like a crash course into how to start your voiceover career. And it's basically just my take on it, how it worked for me. And what I tell my students in that class is that you really have to start with acting, because that has to be the foundation for everything. A lot of people don't realize that voiceover is not just reading off of a page, because everyone can do that. Mm-hmm. And it's not always riveting. So you have to fall back on your acting skills in order to bring what's on the page to life and to give the client what they're looking for, and, make sure the character's intention is there and all of those things. And a lot of people just want to start, hit the ground running straight into voiceover without any acting training. And that's always my first thing, was if you haven't had any acting at all, go back and do some of that first, and you'll be much more well equipped to work in voiceover, because we don't have any of the other tools that are given to you when you're on camera or on stage. We're not working with lights. We're not working very often with another actor, even in a scene. We're not working with makeup or costumes or sets. All of that needs to be brought from your own actor's tool bag, if you will. So that's number one nugget.
I think that's sage advice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Daniel?
Anything further, Jesse?
Oh, no.
Yes.
No,
okay.
I think that
cool.
covered. Everyone in the
good.
chat, if I guess we will try to keep this under an hour. So for everyone in the chat, again, I apologize for the quality of the live stream, but a better version will be coming. But if you would like to start putting your questions in the chat, we can start asking them soon. Actually, Melon Speedruns, a friend of the podcast, actually just asked... He says, "Hey, Mrs. Gibson, I have a question for you. Was it the first time you were doing grunts, such as damage and attack sounds for Impa? If so, how was it recording weird noises?"
Oh my gosh. I hope you're not asking that because you think they sound bad.
I doubt it.
It kind of, yes. It definitely was. And in voiceover land, we call those exerts, or exertions, right? If you're falling down or you're taking a hit or, whatever, being blown off the ground. And I often will have to do those in video game auditions that are more combat centric. And I think I talked to our director about that, because I've always felt so weird and insecure about my exerts. I'm not a fighter. I'm not, I don't have any frame of reference of what being lit on fire. I just feel so out of my element as an actor, trying to pull that in, right? And then at the same time thinking about not completely blowing out the microphone and, or whatever, hitting something. So, yes, it was my first time. Yes, I felt like a big spaz, but the director was really awesome. And he said he's been doing those, directing those kinds of things for 15 years or more. And he actually told me that I was doing really good. And I was like, oh, thank you. Because I feel like a dupe.
Yeah, I imagine.
Sorry. And I felt much better, right? He boosted my confidence. And then I was like, okay, great. Let's do this then. I'm so happy to hear you say that.
Yeah. I imagine it like playing the game, it doesn't seem awkward at all because those just accompany all the actions. But I can only imagine how being in like a recording booth and just being like, yeah, whatever, might be a little awkward to go through.
Yeah. And what I heard, and it may have actually been a class that I took with Jeremy Hall before getting this opportunity to work with him professionally. I think it was him saying that a lot of actors will, when they have to do those, on their own or in an audition, they'll have like weights or a hammer or something in the booth that they can, put in the physicality of having something heavy and hitting someone with a weapon or whatever it is to bring more reality to it. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Still haven't done it, but I will.
Yeah. I was going to say,
definitely do that on the day.
That kind of goes back to what you were saying about having a base around normal acting as opposed to just jumping into voice acting, because if they're acting with an object to try to make it seem a bit more realistic. And I guess that's a lot more common for people that are used to voice acting in anime and other action games and stuff as well, because there's always those long drawn out screams and a bunch of like really quick you said? I was gonna say gasps. Yeah. I don't really know what to call them.
Exertion.
Yeah. And even though Zelda, the series, hasn't had real voice acting, there's always been someone voice acting for Link in the games that's always done those yells and everything.
Only excerpts.
Yeah.
Yes, that's all he does. He's the strong silent type.
Yeah.
We don't mind that. That's all right.
Do you want to take another question from the chat, Daniel?
Yeah, so Birdman actually, once again, asked, what is your favorite line of Impas on both games? I guess one from each. I guess be careful about spoilers if you can.
So I think on Breath of the Wild, my favorite line is because we had to do those so many times, and they just pop up in different ways so many times when you're going through that scene. And I just thought it was very funny. I lived in Japan for 1.5 years, and that is very much a thing that they do, where in America, we're listening to you and we'll say, yeah, right? But in Japan, it's very much of that, right? It's just a different cultural thing. And so that was a lot of fun to be like, oh, I'm doing these as an old lady now. That's funny. So that was fun. That's probably my favorite there. And then I have to say I love Steal Yourself, because the move, I didn't see any of that when I was recording. So the move that's associated with that, I think is so awesome that I really dig that one a lot. And then I like when she says goodbye. She's like, later. Finished with you.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Carne Asada in the chat says, question, have you played any of the Zelda games? If so, which is your favorite and why? So
I have not. Yeah. I have to be honest. That's my personal spoiler. I grew up, I'm old school, so I had the first NES, when I was younger, and Zelda did exist, and I have friends that played all the Zelda and are still big fans, and but I didn't play Zelda. I've of course seen gameplay of the stuff that I've done. I haven't gotten our Switch yet, so there's that. But my jam was Tetris. That was
Yes.
really my game. I'm a big puzzle nerd, and so that was my game. I did enjoy the duck hunt sometimes, through the gun many times, because I would get angry that I was like, that's not where I pointed it at. And then Super Mario. But I was never as good as I wanted to be at Super Mario. I was much, much better at Tetris. I'm a little competitive, so I like to do things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
So,
Earlier, when you mentioned...
Yeah, I haven't.
Oh, sorry.
No problem, I'm done.
No, it's like, again, usually I can kind of tell when people are done or about to start talking again, because like the body language or whatever, but like my screen's a blur, so I apologize for interrupting Daniel or you, Andy. But I was gonna...
All this glamorous makeup that I did today.
You mentioned...
Just for the fans, because... Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
That was a funny thing in the email whenever you mentioned that you were going to get all glamorous for the people watching.
Because I didn't even think about asking last time if we were going to be on camera. And it was the day after Thanksgiving. I just assumed that it would be an audio interview. So then when he said it was video, I was like, oh, God, I haven't done my hair. I'm like in my pajamas. But that was the natural beauty, and now you get all the glam. Yeah. We're
That's okay. I'm wearing sweats right now, so don't feel bad.
And that was the interview with Zelda Universe, right?
Because I plug in my computer so that it doesn't die. Give me just 1 second.
All right.
Yes. But yes, I think you're right about that, Jesse. I saw that Twitter post that it was Zelda Universes, I believe.
Yeah. I still need to go and watch that. So there's a question in here that...
Which one?
The one from RPG, since Breath of the Wild came out.
Oh, that we touched on that a bit already.
Yeah. Where's our Andy amiibo?
Where's our amiibo?
I know!
That's the question.
Yeah.
Seriously!
So with that question...
I have a perfect spot for it on my shelf.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone... I'm sure everyone can see Daniel's giant amiibo collection in the background.
I love that. I've never been a figurine. I think that would be epic.
Yes. She totally needs one. I don't know if they will come out with it in Hyrule Warriors. I know Breath of the Wild, they had all of the champions and a few different Zelda and Link amiibos. They even had the bokoblins and stuff. So, like...
They did. I've had so many different versions. Get one Impa. Come on.
Right?
Yeah.
He doesn't even talk.
Yeah, and the simple enemies, like the moblins or the bokoblins, they had their own amiibo, and it's like, why not Impa? Especially in this game, since it's a playable character. But that question from RPG says, since Breath of the Wild came out, are you envious of the attention the voice actors doing the champions got compared to the much more legendary characters you voiced, like Impa? Where's our Andi amiibo? So,
well, in the beginning, I was a little bit, because I wanted to do more cons and stuff like that, and the rest of the cast was getting invited to cons, and I was like, oh, boo. But I'm happy for my friends. You know, I think it's awesome that they're getting all the attention, and now I get to be a little part of that. And I'm hoping, you know, when the world gets back to some kind of safety and we can gather again, that more cons will happen and things like that. But I had heard a little bit through the grapevine about some of the Guardians games, the other Heroes games, and I was like, oh, I don't know what that is, and I guess Impa's not a part of that because I wasn't invited to do those things. But now all I knew about this one, that I was going to be doing a legacy character. So that's why I thought it was old Impa coming back, and I had heard about A Breath of the Wild 2. But then we learned it's a prequel. Ha 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 ha! We tricked you all.
Yeah, I think that is...
this one's not a question, but we did get another super chat from Cloud World Review, whose username is questionable, but that's... but they donated $5 and said... Question, they just said, thank you for portraying the best iteration of Impa I've ever seen since 1980 Calamity by far.
Oh, thank you, Clown World. That's very, very nice. Thank you.
That's probably a sentiment I share as well.
Oh, thank you.
It really is.
Well, it was definitely a lot of fun, and it's fun to, be able to voice a character kind of again that never had a voice, and that she's getting reviews, and she's being welcomed by the Zelda community, who I know take their games very seriously. So I do not take that lightly. I appreciate that very much.
So to kind of go along with that, there's a statement, I guess. It says, tell Andi to get used to the action commands because I'm betting she'll be in Smash Ultimate, I hope. And I think that's something that a lot of people have been wanting, is that another Zelda character be put into Smash Brothers. So if Impa could be in Smash Brothers, because there are so many sword fighters in Smash Brothers, that it would be nice to have a variation on that with a Zelda character. So I hope that Impa does, because
we'll see.
Yeah.
From your mouth to Nintendo's ears.
Yes. Listen, yes. Nintendo. There's another one from Swifter1243. Says, are you from any kids shows? Your voice sounds familiar to me. Also, I recognize your name for some reason. So they must have just tuned in a few.
No, I haven't done any kids shows, but like I said, I have done a lot of commercials, and that could be where you're hearing me. Although a lot of my friends, when they hear my commercials, even though I'm just speaking in my normal voice, they're surprised that it's me. So I guess when I get on the microphone and I'm in professional mode and I have to tell you some crafties, I get much more serious. I don't really know. But there's all kinds of stuff on my website, AndiGibson.com, and you can go through and see if maybe something on there is where you're recognizing my voice from. I do get on almost a daily basis, especially when Will and Grace was still on the air, that I sound like Megan Mullally, Karen from Will and Grace. I got that on a regular thing. So it could be that. She's really the only person that that my voice has been compared to on a pretty regular basis. I'll take her career.
Someone earlier, I can't find the question anymore, but Melon Speedruns kind of asks it again. And what was it? What was the baby guardian's name again?
Tarako?
Tarako? Yes. Basically, they were asking...
I'll just call him Egg, honestly.
What...
My good little egg.
Yeah. They were joking around asking if you still hated the egg, or if you have come around on it now that you're not being forced to hate it due to the lines. Tarako, yes.
Oh.
Tarako.
He's cute. It was from the beginning, and I loved all the little sounds he makes. I like that, when they find an inanimate object, like little robot thing that I guess is made animate, and then given a voice through beeps, and I just think that's darling. So I always thought it was really cute. Impa had issues because she didn't realize what his use was. Right. So I think when she figured that out, then she's like, "Oh, all right, okay, you're
have to have a use. He's adorable."
Yeah.
We gotta. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to read that as well. Birdman donates, says, "Can you say 'Still yourself'? I am ready, please."
It's okay
Which-
if you can't do
Yeah.
some contractual
Yeah.
thing, but
I know, I don't think it's contractual. I want to make sure. Steel yourself! I am ready.
that was marvelous. Just
Thank
chef
you.
kiss. Chef's kiss.
Ah. Swifter.
Actually, I'll tell you a funny
yes.
story.
Sorry.
Is my wife really dislikes that line because I've been playing the game so much, and she's heard it on repeat so many times because it's a move I use as often as I can because it's very powerful. I never bore of it, but every time I see her, she's like, okay.
I like when she blows something up and finishes, and then she starts laughing. I think
Oh,
that's
yes.
great.
It's not just when she blows something up. If she's in your team and someone else does it, she'll also laugh at that too. She'll be like,
I love it.
and it's just
I love that.
it's great.
Because I had to record a bunch of different laughs, and I was like, I wonder where they're going to put these. So then when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's great.
That is.
So,
Jesse, you're gonna say something
yeah.
before I just talked over.
No. It's completely my fault. I can't wait to get the higher quality version of this from you, so I can immediately upload it so everyone can watch in better quality. But I was gonna say, since I was having such a hard time trying to remember how to correctly pronounce Terraco, I think I said Tarako at first. Were there moments in the game because some of the names in Zelda games, there's always been a debate on like how to pronounce certain words, like because there's never been voice acting in the game, so there's never been official ways to say or pronounce some of the different names of the locations or the characters. So were there any times like that with you to where they had to correctly pronounce something, or was it different than how you thought, or how was that for you?
I think the only thing I don't actually verbalize a lot of, so that didn't get in the way too much. I think I say Pura, which is pretty cut and dry. We did have Nintendo on the session recording, listening into the recording. So if there was anything that I flubbed or they needed the accent on a different syllable, they would pop in and let me know, what it was. What did I say? Sheikah Slate. And in the first one, it was Hyrule and Calamity Ganon. It wasn't too much of the more complicated stuff.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Another question here from, hopefully I'm speaking of pronunciation. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this person's name right. Israel Lorena asks, how did you get into the mentality when talking to Zelda? You mentioned that you were alone in the studio there. She says, I remember when voice actor Formosa said she acted like Zelda was her cat. So what was your envisioning when talking to Zelda? An older sister, perhaps, or something else in your own life?
Oh, well, we talked about, Jeremy kind of laid out that we were kind of best friends, but I also, I do think I thought of her more like a younger sister, because I was definitely protective over her. And that's obviously shown, and I obviously care for her, but, I think kind of true to my form, Andi Gibson, she does express a bit of tough love too. So, I think an older sister, it would be a good way of putting that.
Okay. Jesse, any want to add, or?
No, I was just seeing this, and I know Joe answered the last time he was on, but Swifter asks, when did you record for AOC? I'm curious how close to release you guys are supposed to get the recording. Seems like there was a lot of voice acting in this game.
Yeah, there was a lot, and I was surprised when we just kept going through cutscenes. And some of them I just have like one line, but I was like, oh wow, she's really a much bigger part of this game. And then we were dealing with the pandemic. So initially I got the call in March, and we were supposed to have our sessions in April. And then we had the lockdown and we had all of that stuff happening. And originally, I didn't think the game was coming out until 2021. But when I was popping in my lines, everybody else's stuff had been done as far as what I was seeing in my cutscenes. So what ended up happening is then we were trying to decide from home or if I was going to come in studio. And so my sessions were in July, I think early July, and I did go into the studio, which I don't think everybody did, but our timelines seemed to be quite different because I was already hearing everybody else's work when they popped me into the scenes.
Yeah, we had Sean on like a week or two before Age of Calamity released, but Joe said that he had his around basically the same months that you said, but he recorded from home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he has a little girl, and he just had a second baby.
Yes.
Yes.
So they were most concerned about health and safety and him not bringing anything home to the family, and just better safe than sorry in this situation now. So yeah.
Yeah, and there was.
I was happy to.
I was
get out and do something.
I was gonna say that you did an amazing job as Impa, because in Breath of the Wild everything had like more of a serious tone with it, and older Impa seemed to have more of a serious tone anyways, but just all the characters in general seemed to be like taking everything more serious, to where there was a lot of joking around in this game. So there was a bunch of moments where I openly laughed with my little brother at some of the cutscenes. So when you were in the studio, was there moments like that where you were reading the lines or seeing what was going on during the cutscene and it made you openly laugh or take a moment to take what was actually going on? Because I don't know, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this because it's not necessarily a spoiler, but there's a moment when Link is given the lava rock thing to eat, and he actually tries to eat it, and it's one of the funniest parts in the game, aside from the little baby egg robot guy kind of picking on Impa, and I think some of the other characters as well. That's always funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, were there any parts like that for you?
He gets under Impa's skin for sure, and I think my favorite scene is when they come in. She's like, well, we did it, we've got all the pieces of the puzzle, and then he comes up and she's like, oh, and she's chasing him around. When my husband saw that scene, he goes, it sounds like you and our dog. Kind of like that. It was just having to chase him around and having to match all those sounds also. So each time the Japanese actors had a little in there, I had to put in something. So that was a lot of fun to record. But I love the teapot line.
Yeah.
But I like that. I think that's my favorite scene because it shows a different side of her. She's kind of playful, but she's really just being annoyed because she wants to be all business time.
The Clown World Review gives another...
He's back!
Yeah, he says...
The Clown World is back!
My wife loved the tension between Impa and Terako. I keep mispronouncing it throughout this game. So yes, there was a huge fan of the tension between you two. And I think the back and forth, even though it's a little baby egg robot, and there's... it still has so much character to it that I'm sure there's lots of other people as well that just love the interactions between those two characters.
Yeah, and it brought more of the fun, playful side, like you guys were saying. The feel of this game is a little bit different because we know the gloom and doom is coming. I feel like maybe it was important for Nintendo to be like, well, let's add some lighter bits. Let's add a little bit of fun, a little bit of playfulness, a little bit of laughter, kind of break.
I think a big part of that is you mentioned the doom and gloom. Whenever they first announced this game taking place like 100 years before Breath of the Wild, and it revolving around the champions and their adventure with Link and Zelda, everyone's first thought was like, well, I'm assuming everyone's just going to die at the end of this game, because when you play like the Champions Ballad, the DLC for Breath of the Wild, and you get to play through more of or not play through, but you get to see more of the story from 100 years ago, and then all of the memories and stuff in Breath of the Wild, without spoiling this game, that is like everyone's first thought, especially with Nintendo in the first trailer coming out and saying 100 years before Breath of the Wild. Everyone's like, well, this is going to be a very bittersweet ending for everyone. So seeing all of the comedy elements in this game, I think was a big push to keep their hopes alive. Plus there's I don't think it's spoilers because it's in the very first cutscene before you even get to play the game, but the time travel element to this game, to where the baby egg goes back in time and they kind of get warned about everything. It brings a bit of mystery to the game, to where you don't know, like it could have been something towards like this could have always happened and it could end up being the same way, or something could change, or it could be like the adventure of how it gets to the end changes, but it still has the same end. So it kind of keeps that mystery, and I think it was the best way possible for Nintendo and the new developers, Koei Tecmo, to kind of give you what you're sort of expecting with the prequel for Breath of the Wild, but keep it unique, guessing what's going to happen next. Because the one character in the game, I forget his name as well, but he's kind of like the evil character that keeps the plot going forward, keeps mentioning that even though like the egg or whatever comes back in time, he's still trying to get the same outcome from what he's seeing, like the future events. So it was kind of like the best way possible for them to keep the story going, which is a long way to get me to go to my final question, is what were your overall thoughts on like between Breath of the Wild and the way that its story went, and Age of Calamity and its story? Was it kind of a shock for you to see how different the story was, or was it something that you thought about? Or how was it for you?
I think it's really cool when any sequel or prequel type of thing with a game or a film or what have you goes in kind of a different direction than you were expecting. So Nintendo was like, okay, we're going to keep you guys on your toes. Get ready. Because everyone was expecting a sequel to Breath of the Wild. So they dropped that. And they're like, oh, no, this is actually a prequel. And then, like you said, they put those different turns in. And I just think when someone sets out on a creative endeavor like that, and they're like, no, we're taking this in a totally different direction than the first one. I always find that to be really awesome. And I have a lot of respect for creators that do that, because they're taking a chance with their diehard fans. But also really cool because it's giving the fans something new, something that they weren't expecting. And I think at this point, the Zelda franchise and Nintendo know who their fans really are and how loyal they are and how to make them happy. So it's cool after this many games that they can still do that and do something totally different. With different twists and turns and things in the storyline that people weren't expecting. So, yay!
I think it's well put. Yeah.
All right, Daniel, do you have a final question?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a kind of a weird, specific, random question, but like I mentioned, I've been flip flopping between both of these games now, basically since the demo came out, because that's just kind of the person I am. But There's a specific point in Breath of the Wild, one specific line where the first time when Link walks in and Impa sees Link, and it's the first time she's seen him in 100 years, and she's old, she's aged quite a bit, but there's this light of familiarity. She's like, glad to see him. She's like, oh, Link, you haven't changed, I haven't aged, but you remember me, your old friend, right? And he's just like, no, not a thing. But of course, at that point, from your perspective, having recorded that, you hadn't seen what we've seen now in Age of Calamity. You hadn't seen actually that they were friends and that they have all this history together. So was you were given, or what was that like recording that now, or back then, I should say, versus if you had the chance to go line of dialogue again now, would you do anything different with it?
Oh, that's a great question.
Not to say there's anything wrong with it. It's delivered perfectly, but I should put that out there. That strengthens it, but still.
Thank you. But, I think it's important to say that we're never just thrown out there by the seat of our pants. We've always got the directors keeping us grounded in the character and in the storyline. Mm-hmm. And so with that, working with Jamie, he was like, this is your dude, like, this is your little bud, and you've spent all this time together, and now you're old and you're seeing him again after all this amount of time, so it still needs to be warm. And he was mentioning like a little bit grandmotherly to Link at that time. So yeah, I didn't know any of this stuff happening, and I don't know how much young Impa at this point in Age of Calamity really thinks of him as a friend. I think she's still a warrior, and that's always at the forefront. For her, it's still always kind of a business relationship, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So right side, they're on the same side, and they have the same objective. I don't think that the emotional part of it gets tied in for her until that's necessary.
Okay.
So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. It does.
Okay.
It's just the inner workings of my brain overthinking these small snippets of dialogues. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't remember feeling like in the recording, I spent so much time with Zelda. And I'm spending time just basically in the field only with Link. Mm-hmm. So it's different, you know what I mean? Our relationships are different that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
and
fair.
Link never really has that conversation with anyone for him to get too close to them anyways. So it's like...
He's hard. It's not to crack.
Yeah, I feel like even after the entire adventure of Age of Calamity, everyone would just be like, yeah, Link's still a complete stranger. He doesn't talk to anyone. It'd be like the silent guy that's just always in your group that no one talks to. But I want to say, Andi, Thank you so much for coming on. And before you go, to wrap this all up, with Breath of the Wild, since we didn't get to have you on for it, when that game came out, it won Game of the Year. So what was that experience like for you to be not just in this game that ended up being like the best-selling Zelda game ever, the first Zelda game that actually had voice acting, but ended up going on to win like at the Game Awards, the Game of the Year, and get so many awards from other Game Award people. Because it didn't just win for the Game Awards, It won for like IGN and a bunch of other magazines and websites ended up giving it so many other awards as well. So what was that experience like?
I think I ended up hearing that Breath of the Wild got something like 189 worldwide Game of the Year accolades. And I was like, but what? Like that many of them even exist? That was pretty awesome. And I think I watched this stream of the Game Awards here. And I know Patricia and Joe and Elizabeth went to the awards. And it was very exciting. And I I'm a self-proclaimed not really a gamer. So just watching the snippets and all of the amazing, it's just like, it was very cool, a moment of pride for me to be not only part of a game that had gotten that much attention, and that much respect really for everything that went into making it, but also to be a part of such a cool community that's doing so much artistically and touching so many lives. You know, when we spend our time sitting in our booth by ourselves, we forget that the work we do actually can affect other people. You know what I mean? So that was just really cool to see how many people were there and tweeting about it, and, you know, who liked what parts of what games, and all the amazing graphics and the music, and, you know, so much goes into it. It's like, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, there was, you mentioned how it's touched so many lives. There's a bunch of people that recorded their reactions to the game, and like they, just from like the first Breath of the Wild trailer, the way that the game looked and the voice acting and everything that was in it, there were so many fans that recorded themselves like tearing up and crying because of just how excited they were for it, and the story, the little bit of story that you get in like the first trailer or the second trailer. There's a lot of people that had really amazing reactions to it, so I'm sure that must have been kind of crazy as well to go through all of that, and then have those people reach out to you like you mentioned and be like, oh, I was such a fan of your work and everything. So
yeah, absolutely. And it's just, you know, it came out and just kind of blew everyone away at how beautiful it was. You know what I mean? They really put all the time and effort. You know, you look at the final credits and just hundreds and hundreds of people putting in so much work and dedication into every single little detail of the game. And I think they have outdone themselves with Age of Calamity. But you know what I mean? They set the bar pretty high for themselves. So there you go.
That's fair. It's a high bar. Absolutely.
Yeah.
all right, well, Andy, before we go, do you have anything that you would like to promote, that you would like other people who may be a fan of your work in Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, something else that they could go and check out of yours if they want to?
Well, I've got, it took me forever to finally get a career website together. So that's andygibson.com, and I have singing stuff on there and commercial stuff on there and game stuff, and I have several different pages. Like I said, I have autograph stuff, and I've just got a couple more orders while we were chatting here that I need to print out. And if you have ideas on, you know, different images you'd like to see, but all my handles, it's easy to connect because I never remember my names, my social media names. I wasn't smart enough to like make them all exactly the same thing. But so I have those little widgets on there, and that's the easiest way to connect with me. I love hearing from the fans. And it's all very exciting. I've been interacting on Twitter and Instagram and, you know, like with you guys and setting up interviews and things like that. And so many people are saying, oh my gosh, I'm so excited that you even wrote me back. And I'm like, oh, of course. Why wouldn't I? You know, I think maybe I had a bunch of different bots that just didn't do anything. So now I'm like, yay, we have interaction. Yeah. Interaction is happening with people.
And RPG, who's been in the chat the entire interview, he posted a link to, or your username for Twitter, and says to follow Twitter, Andy on Twitter. Thanks, Andy. You've been awesome and looking forward to hearing you in future games. Cheers. So
yay, thank you so much, RPG.
Yes, and once again, Andy, thank you so much for coming on. And for everyone watching, as soon as this ends, we will try to have a higher quality version up for all of you. So thank you to all of you who have been here this whole time during this, I wouldn't necessarily call it a mess, but thank you. And